Mind focus, we good? We rolling, we
Yeah.
speeding,
Yeah.
we in the film club house. Sorry, I'm taking over.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Film Club Podcast. My name's S.
I'm Jared, and we have with us a very special guest today. I will let him introduce himself.
What's up, guys? My name is Joey Nicotra. I'm a director of photography. I am a podcast host myself with the Rough Cut Club and creative director for Cinema Story Productions.
We definitely want to get some knowledge out of this guy. This guy's an awesome DP. So I think just first and foremost, what's your story? How did you go from skater to filmer?
Yeah, so I actually started out as a skateboarder. I was a competitive athlete for 12 years. And so I grew up actually being on the other side of the camera. And then after, having one of the classic stories of shoulda, coulda, but got hurt, broke my back twice, and then destroyed both of my ankles. And the ankles are actually what ultimately took me out. But once I lost that piece of my identity, I needed something else to channel all of my energy and, creative energy, if you will, into. And then the next closest thing in my life was filmmaking. So I transitioned to being behind the camera and making, artistic filmmaking projects for other people. And ironically, I've never actually filmed skateboarding to this day. So
Wow.
Really? Well, I was like one of my first video, because I originally started shooting like a lot of music videos, but I ran into one of my buddies. It's like a really old friend, and I just so happened to be driving down the street, and one day, and I seen him, and he was skateboarding, and I'm like, bro, like, where you headed? He's like, skate park. I'm like, let me film something.
Yeah.
So I put together something for him. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, so of course I've filmed stuff on like an iPhone and whatnot, but skateboarding unfortunately doesn't pay the bills like commercial work does.
Yeah.
And so, but I actually, like you, started out, I made music for 6 years and kind of grew up with friends that made music, and they needed someone to make a music video for them. And so I was like, well, let me just cop this Canon T5i really quick. And I started making music videos for my friends. And then once I started auditing my time, I realized that most of my energy was going into how I could be better at this craft instead of music. And I realized I was more in touch with filmmaking than I was making music. And so I put the mic down and then started just picking up the camera ever since then.
Nice, man.
Thanks.
For me, video was paying the bills. So that's pretty much what got me turned on to it. So.
Yeah, it's super cool. So you said you started out with music videos.
Yep.
In a sense. Is that something you still pursue when you can? Or?
Oh yeah. So music videos to me are like the ultimate expression of like creativity, because you can create a world for your audience that doesn't have to make sense, but it's just true artistic expression, putting, your camera, painting with whatever canvas you want, from lenses to cameras to lighting to storytelling and, the locations and everything. You can tell whatever story you want.
Do you have a favorite genre of music video that you like to shoot more?
I grew up being a huge hip hop head. And so when I can do a hip hop music video, but I'll say this, the genre of music doesn't actually matter to me as much as if I even like the song to begin with, because it can be some pop song, it can be a country song, it can be whatever, it can be some kid's song. It doesn't matter to me, but if I actually rock with the song, then I'm going to be really excited when I get to go and shoot it. But typically if I get a hip hop song that I'm really stoked on, and I'm stoked on the artist, and we have a good dynamic when we work together, then genre aside, that's the most important piece for me.
Dope. Yeah.
What's your process of like making a music video? How do you do pre-pro or anything like that? Or?
100%. So essentially the very first step is you got to listen to the song. Yeah. And typically I listen to the song several times and, wait for something, an idea to come to me. But at the end of the day, like, you're making entertainment. And so at the forefront of my mind, I'm thinking of how can I best entertain an audience from this video, and how can I push myself creatively with the budget that the artist has. And so typically I try not to think of a budget unless I know that, the person's balling on a really low budget. And I try to think of how can I stretch this budget to make a video that looks like it was shot with a budget this big.
Yeah.
And so thinking of that concept is like, the heart of, doing music videos. It's like, let me do something that pushes my ability, that entertains an audience, and that helps the artist's song go the distance. Because at the end of the day, you're doing a business transaction, and there has to be return on the investment for them because of your ability to do your craft with excellence and entertain an audience from their music.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like to get into music videos and want to get into music videos. It's something he's pursued for a while. So as far as like taking that pursuit, you know, do you have any tips for that? Because I know it could be pretty lucrative. You know, it's like you get low budgets all the time, or people who just flake, or they're not serious about the music. But when you're first starting out, you know, what do you have to?
The biggest thing, without question, is your portfolio. And in order to build your portfolio, a lot of times you have to start with either really cheap work or sometimes even free spec work. And so one of the projects that I did really early in my career, I actually paid to do it because I wanted to make sure the props were sick, and we had entry into like really cool locations. And I actually put my own money into filming a project that was the catalyst to allow me to get some of my very first clients, because they saw that what I could do in that video. And so when you're getting started, it is all about building your portfolio. And then once you do that, your first few portfolio projects, you have something to bring to a potential client and say, this is what I can bring to you, and this is what I value my work at. But if you don't have a portfolio of a music video, you're going to have a really hard time convincing somebody what your product is worth.
Yeah, completely agree.
That was something that I kind of learned. I wouldn't say early on, but it was like I was shooting a lot of these like low budget music videos. It was like this location, and we'll probably come over to this location. There was a lot of like slow-mo stuff. And then I did learn that it was like, if you want to like take that next step and like shoot bigger budget videos, you have to put forward the effort. Sometimes you have to put forward your own money in order to do it and to make it happen, to show like what you're capable of.
I always say that passion is the secret ingredient to getting your next big paycheck, because you have to sometimes do a project with passion, and sometimes passion isn't paid. And so you have to put forth, unpaid passion into a project to get that next big paycheck.
Dropping gems.
Yeah. How about, I'm going to play devil's advocate on that. When is it the time to take out the passion and to be the hire? Someone's hiring you to shoot a certain video their way. They just need you to show up and make it happen.
It's a great question. I think for me, if I have an opportunity to work with a new director or a new producer, those guys are the gatekeepers to giving us work. If I'm doing a project that I do not feel is going to be a portfolio piece, but it is just going to be a paycheck, then that's typically the time when it's like, okay, this is something that I'm going to need to charge for. But if I have the opportunity to work with talent that I think is going to be beneficial for my career, or a director or a producer that maybe this project is going to be on the low, but the next one I know they're good for, then those are opportunities that I may take because I know that will lead to future work. But if it's not going to be something that benefits my portfolio in the long run, it's normally time to charge.
Yeah.
Pay up for the product.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. I actually just recently did a shoot for a guy in Houston. I basically broke even on it. Like going out there, we turned it into a weekend trip. Didn't get paid much, but I was like, well, this is another opportunity to make a good connection. And he actually ended up hitting me up today for a job, the one I was telling you about in January, for like 4 times the amount of that first one, plus covered travel and covered hotel and all this stuff. So it's kind of like, there's like those times it's like, okay, this is a networking possibility. The shoe wasn't something that would go in my portfolio, but.
And that's the other thing too. So like even just how we met was you taking on free work at a project that I was involved with. And it turned into an opportunity for you to network with us, which in turn, you've now gotten paid work out of. So like if there's an opportunity for me to do a free job, but I'm going to be on set with 100 different people that could potentially hire me because it's this massive, feature film, then that's 100 different potential jobs down the road that I could net if I go and take this free one. And so that's also, plays into my decision into doing free work or not.
Yeah. Everyone always says it, if you want to, you got to put yourself on set. You got to do some free work to show what you're capable of so that they'll hire you on for more stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting about like filmmakers and getting into the business is that it's not a competition in and of itself. Like we're all filmmakers. We all get behind a camera. We all move lights around. We all do this. Maybe we've PA'd. We've done everything. And it's like, I think it's like when you're able to like extract your ego from it and realize like, hey, we're all going to benefit from this. Like, yeah, maybe I don't get the DP to shoot you're hiring me on, but you want me to gaff. It's like, I'm making money. And then you get to learn. And then like you say, you get the network. So it's like, I think it's just like this weird thing with like filmmaking. We all know about it. We've all been on those sets or met those people. It's like a weird gatekeep. It's a weird ego thing, but yeah, it's cool and showing up and like getting to do that shoot on that LED wall or whatever we did was like, one, it was just a dope opportunity. First time I had ever been on a big set like that. Met a handful of people. That one of the people that stand out was Nick. You know, watching him set the lights up was so cool.
Yeah, and so then another thing to that point is if I'm going to do a project where I know I'm going to learn, a lot of time for me, education is worth more than money is. And so for that project in particular, it was my first time DPing a project on an LED volume wall. And I took it for free because not many people get the opportunity to learn how to actually shoot in a volume studio when they don't have a client's budget, you know, burying them with pressure and stress in the back of their mind.
Yeah. And there was so many things that y'all ran into on that, you know.
Of course.
And so it's like, it's cool for everybody. And I think also it's cool for the set that brought you guys out. Like it was just a learning experience for everybody. But you're talking portfolio pieces. That's one that's makes you're going to stand out so far.
Right. Well, and not only that, but with that example in particular, like I didn't have a virtual production in my portfolio. And so whether the project turned out to be crap or not, I have one rep under my belt. And so if I don't have a rep under my belt in anything, I'm typically going to walk into there and say, I still have to pay my dues to this.
Yeah. A lot of times like people want to see your type of work. If like for that type of set, they're like, have you ever done this before? And you're like, yeah, I have. So you're able to get the job.
Exactly.
So I think we switched gears to Washington's Armor. I think that's what's so cool. I just learned this about you the other day when I don't know what we were doing, but you were telling me about how you started out as the BTS guy, and I'll let you finish off that, but it's a super cool story.
Yeah, so there's a feature film that I actually got to be the director of photography on, and it was a relatively large feature film, but I actually started out as the behind-the-scenes videographer on the project back, I think in 2020, whenever, I think it was like 3 months before COVID hit. And so we did about, you know, a month or so, give or take, of sporadic days in different states of production for this. And I was not helping the project at all other than documenting it. But I got an opportunity by being the behind the scenes videographer to show off what I could do with the camera. And then fast forward a couple months later and COVID hits. And so we had a break in production for this feature that we had only shot probably less than 2 weeks of coverage on. And then we put 9 months plus in between, about a year in between. And ultimately the producers wanted to go a different direction with the DP after about a year gap. And so they actually brought a new DP in, not me. But they gave me the opportunity to be a second unit B camera operator. And so in that process, I actually got to work with a second unit director who was also a producer for the project. And in that time period, he really got to see me kind of step up, and the DP of that second unit really kind of allowed me to take their role. And so the second unit DP or the second unit director saw what I was capable of doing. And so when that second DP didn't work out, the second unit director was like, hey, I think this is your guy to finish the movie. And so I actually got to do just over half of the film and climbed the ladder all the way from bottom to the first unit DP of the film.
That's really cool. So I'm still kind of learning a little bit about this because you said second unit. So from my understanding, you've got first unit, which is like filming the main
principal photography.
Yeah, exactly. But then second unit is off filming other like fillers stuff, like
correct.
Yeah, what exactly?
So sometimes with schedules, with actors' availability, with, you know, a variety of different logistics, weather, who knows, sometimes the team will need to split up into 2 units, which is basically when a director says, hey, I trust this team enough to go get coverage for the film that we need while we're working on this piece that we deem to be a more important piece of the story, if you will. But all of that stuff requires time. And so if they can send a smaller team of people out there to go get coverage for the film, then that's typically what happens. And in this case, the second unit director was also a producer on the project.
Okay.
And so in me working with him for an extended amount of time, we developed a relationship, and he got to see that I was the guy that they wanted to have finish the job.
Sweet.
That's super cool.
And so you went from second to first?
I went from BTS to second unit B camera operator to a sort of second unit DP shared role to first unit DP of the entire film.
That's like an
dope.
underdog story.
Yeah.
You know, it's so cool. But so I don't even know this. How did you get the BTS job? Like, what was even that connect there?
So the director of the project, who also funded the film and was the EP on the project, had a relationship with my business partner, Shane Wrightsammer, who is the CEO and founder of Cinema Story Productions, which is the company that I do most of my DP work under. And they have a long-standing relationship, and Shane actually brought me in to do the behind the scenes for their feature.
So did you have much DP experience before that?
So I did on like commercial projects and music videos and stuff like that, but I had never done it for a feature or really a crew of larger than like 12 people. And there was days when we had, there was a battle scene with 80 extras, let alone crew, in that film. And so it was a huge leap in terms of anything that I had ever taken the responsibility for, not to mention millions of dollars riding on a production, which I had never bared the weight of before. And so it was a massive, massive learning experience for me, where preparation met opportunity, but it was really me getting uncomfortable, out of my comfort zone, and building my parachute on the way down.
Did you have your own camera package that you ended up using, or did they have something that they had rented that you had to that you already knew how to use, or did you have to learn how to use?
So I had shot on Red cameras before and done several projects on one, and was actually like thinking about investing in my own. And when I started catching hints of me being a potential DP and whatnot, I actually invested in my own Red right before that project began. And the only reason that I invested in a Red camera is because I knew I would have work from that feature film to fund the camera. And so that was really a big indication of like, hey, it's time to buy a Red. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to go do this, but they have no clients that they can actually utilize it for. And so I waited till I had a client that could essentially help fund just over half of the camera in one project. And that was my indication of, hey, it's time to jump into the Red ecosystem.
Smart move.
That's perfect. Actually, I want to touch on that and say, I want to go back real quick. When you got asked, you started climbing this ladder, something I suffer with and a lot of people suffer with, did you have imposter syndrome? Like, did you ever think like, I should not be here right now, like doing this?
There was definitely a handful of days where I was like, man, if I had more experience, I would have been better prepared for today. But I don't think that that should ever stop you from going and doing something. For me, I kind of went into it knowing that this was going to be one of the hardest, filming projects that I would ever take on. And it was by a long shot. But never in my filmmaking career have I had a more compressed season of growth and hyper growth as a director of photography. And not even just in how to light, but there's so many things that you've never done before, like build a camera rental package for multiple units from a gear rental house. And you have to think of every cable, every little, tiny thing that you need to support your workflow throughout the entire process. Like all of that was such a growth opportunity for me. And then on top of that, this has really been the biggest thing that has been challenging me this year. And I think really it started from filming that first feature. But so much of being a good director of photography isn't just lighting good and picking out a camera, but it's how you lead a crew on set. And so many people can go out and create really beautiful images, but they don't know how to lead a team, and they don't know how to do that with excellence. And so that really showed me like, hey, I have a lot of room to grow in terms of leading like a team of 40 people and delegating with people still respecting me at the end of the day. And so that's really one of the things that has been kind of a cornerstone for me in the last couple of years, is focusing on how can I be a better leader in my team and have my team members walk away and go, wow, like this was a really great day. Even if it was a struggle and the sky fell on us, like the one of the leaders of the day carried us through, and they did it in a way that people can respect me at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, from the first couple times I worked with you, it was cool seeing you go from like Joey Nicotra to like Joey Nicotra, the DP.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, we're chopping it up, whatever. Then it's like, all right, speeding. And, you know, there's times where it's like, hey, I need that moved over here. I need you over here. I need, and it, you know, just whatever. And it's like, it's cool because, again, that I think that takes a confidence to know that what you're saying is correct, or that maybe it's kind of like, hey, I'm not trying to be pushy, but we got to get this done.
Right.
Especially when you're on client time.
Right. Yeah.
And that one we did on the train, I just remember standing back and being like, this is so stressful. Like, this has got to be so stressful. And it was just handled so confidently. You and Shane have like this way of talking to each other that's like, if you don't know, it's like, dude, these guys are like getting after it. But it's like, this is just how it is. And then at the end of the day, everybody hugs it out. We go home. And so it's like, it's just cool to like see like, there's a respect that needs to be had. There's like, hey, that we have a paying client. So like, is that, how do you like go about that? Like, is that something you think about?
There's a couple of things for me that go into it. One, like a lot of you don't always have the luxury of working with people that you know. But in a lot of circumstances, I have the opportunity to pick the guys that I bring onto my team. And the guys that I typically bring onto my team, they know my work dynamic. Again, we don't always have that luxury. Sometimes I'm working with a new director, and just like me talking to the grip, like the director's going to come and talk to me. And so there's all these different work dynamics that are going along. But, you know, having done every role on a film set has helped me to communicate better with my grip department. And so when I ask, you know, my key grip to go bring me 2 Mambo combo stands, I know that I'm asking him to throw a lot of weight around, and I better have some intentionality in saying, hey, go grab me the heaviest stands you can off the truck. Or, you know, it's really being intentional and thinking through, like, how can I make their lives easier? Let me actually think through my day and not just go, oh, we're gonna now flip the world, and me not take the time to think, oh, but we had that one shot and now we got to flip it back. And now I just have my team do double the work. When I'm constantly putting my team in the forefront of my mind and thinking, how can I, one, be efficient, but also two, because everyone appreciates efficiency. If we got to flip the world, we got to flip the world. Nobody's mad at that. But when we got to do it twice, that means I didn't do my job right. And so when I can think through how can I make the day efficient, people typically don't get mad when I make an ask of them. It's when I make an unnecessary ask that means I have room to grow as a DP. And when you do that enough on smaller projects, you get to the bigger projects, hopefully you have to do that less.
Yeah. So going back on the red purchase, it was our first podcast. We talked about if gear matters, all that, you know, the subject. I'm curious on what your stance is on that. Maybe if it's changed over the years, or, you know, you said you went out and bought a red.
What red did you end up getting?
I got the Gemini.
Okay.
And then my business partner has a Komodo. And so we have 2 of those in-house.
2 Komodos or
two reds?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were making that decision, you know, just kind of walk me through like what led up to that, you know, and then just, I'm curious to hear your opinion on gear.
I checked out that episode and heard your guys' response to it. I'm actually glad you asked, because one of the things that I think is important to note with gear is like there is a certain threshold of gear that's required to do a job, which you guys brought up. But at some point, you're buying things that don't actually help you do the job better. And that's when like it gets really easy to get caught up in the web of the gear acquisition. Like, oh, this Mark II just came out, like the Komodo X came out, let me go upgrade now. And it's like, is this really helping me do the job, or is this just something that's nice to upgrade? Because at the end of the day, like the Komodo is a great B camera for me, or A camera if I need 6K. And so at the end of the day, like the type of jobs that you're doing dictate the gear that you need in-house. And if I'm doing something like we were talking about lights before this episode started, where it's like for the very first time in my career, I needed a 1200 because my 600 wasn't powerful enough. Maybe that doesn't mean it's time to buy a 1200. Maybe that just means I had one job where I should have rented and didn't. And if you have something where it's like, oh, I'm going to use this, once or twice a year, at the end of the day, it's probably a better idea to rent those items than it is to invest in them.
I don't even think that's something we touched base on, talking about renting.
We briefly brought it up. I think we both agreed that we're just like, we'd just rather buy it. But
because for me, that's usually where I'm at. I'm like, I usually end up getting gear way before I need it, because I'm like, eventually I know that I'm going to put this to use, and it's better that I have it and I'm able to use it.
Right.
Like a 600X is way more powerful than what I need most of the time. But when I need it, I have it.
Right.
So having a 12, I mean, it's a lot more money, but.
And see, here's the difference though, is that like lighting is something that you're going to use on almost every job you ever do.
Yeah.
And if you invest a little bit more money for a little bit more powerful light than a 300 or a 150 or whatever, then in my mind, that's not really a bad investment, because it's a tool that you're going to use on every job. Even if you don't max it out to 100% intensity, you're going to use that so often, and it's going to give you peace of mind that you have the ability, if the sun ever comes out, that you have more intensity, you can overcompensate.
And realistically, like when it comes to the light, a 1200 isn't any more complicated to set up than a 120D Mark II. However, it does take up a lot more space, so if you like, traveling and stuff like that.
And sometimes you can reallocate funds. So like in that instance, like you could buy, I think, 3 300s for the price of one 1200. And it's way more advantageous when you're getting started to have a background light, a key light, and a hair light than it is to have one really powerful light and not the other components needed to actually light a set. And so I think it's all about the order of operations that you buy stuff in, because eventually, you're going to want multiple lights. And when you only have one 1200, now you've invested more money than you need, than you could have.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm learning with this 600X here. Like we were talking about, it's like, I've got the Light Dome Mini 2, but it works great for the 200. It does not work great for this. And so it's like learning, okay, the bigger the power source, the bigger the light, spread and all that for the fusion that you're going to need. And so it's like, it's just so much to learn. Like what we were talking, it's like, it's not only just buying a 600. It's like, you got to have a C-stand. You got to have a sandbag. You got to have all these different things that go into like every time you buy a piece of gear. So it's like, I probably should rent more often, like when it's necessary. That's purely out of laziness. But
the other thing too is, and I've done this before and I don't feel like shady about it. But when you have a client that is requiring you to have a piece of gear for a job, if they put that, like sometimes if, let's just say a piece of gear costs $1,000, if I invoice them, just add $500 to my day rate or whatever I want to do, I can inflate the rate of the project needed to compensate for the gear needed for the job. And so a lot of times, like if I don't have something that I need for a job, I can either tell, hey, client, you have to rent this, or this is what it'll be if I have to do the job. And it's actually helped me accumulate more gear when something is necessary for a client that I'm likely going to do multiple jobs for over time.
Yeah. So you either tell a client like they can rent it, or you're going to charge them more to do the work to rent it. Is that what
Typically, yeah. So like, for instance, I was doing a job recently. I don't own a 1200D because most of the time I don't need one, but a lot of times I do and I don't have one. And so if I know I need to rent one, I'm going to build $250 into my rental budget that goes to client. And I say, hey, there's going to be some rentals needed to do this based on the scout, based on the photos, whatever. I'm going to boost my day rate a little bit so that I can, pay for some of the gear that is needed to do their job.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to love to put you on the spot with this one.
Yeah.
It's everyone's favorite subject is money when it comes to growing. It's something, I think we all deal with, but what's your advice? Or, it's like, I don't even know like how to even phrase it, but it's like when talking about how to charge somebody, how to confidently say, this is my day rate. How do you get to a point of being like, there's so many things to just like break down your travel costs, you know, like do you charge for, you know, a travel day and then the shoot day, then travel day back home? Like, I'm curious to hear just kind of like your whole workflow.
So, just in terms of like the nitty gritty, I always charge for travel. Like if I have to do a job, that they're like, hey, we're going to fly you to Hawaii. Like maybe I'm so gassed up about it that I'm like, you cover the flight and everything. And like, that's cool. But at the same time, I know I'm also going to lose like a day of work. And oftentimes like clients understand that like this time has to be accounted for, even if it's not at a DP rate.
Right.
And so, you know, per diems are in there, travel is always taken care of and whatnot. In terms of like day rates, I think at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, you know, what you're happy charging and what you actually feel like you're valued at. When I first got started, you know, I told somebody what I was making that when I had probably been in the business for like 3 years, I told somebody else who was just getting started, they asked me offline, like, what do you charge an hour? And I told them, and immediately after they found out that I was doing that, they went and started doing that too. And I was like, I mean, you can try to get away with that, but at the end of the day, like the years that I've put into this craft are valuable. And, you know, the kit that I'm bringing is more valuable. And it's like, you have to charge according to what you're worth. It's like when I bring my Red camera out onto a job, like clients don't get that for free. If they want to pay for it, they can. It's storage. It's a way more expensive asset than like a Sony FX3 or something like that. And so like I have different rates. I do wrap in most of like my lighting and tripods, and I don't nickel and dime it. There's like a basic kit that I have, and then any like bigger ticket items like a Red or cinema lenses or a Movi or, you know, any of these bigger items typically have like a rate attached to them. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. So is that something that you have like, do you have like a sheet and it's like, is that broke down on the invoice? You send the invoice, it's like Movi, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
Like having a lighting package or audio package.
Yeah.
Like
so if it's like a basic thing where it's like a super small crew, it's like, you know, I have like Aperture 300s that come in my kit. I don't nickel and dime, you know, for that stuff. Like my tripods come in my kit, my camera comes in my kit, my basic lenses, you know, all that stuff that isn't like a you know, a nitty gritty or a particular item to do the job is in my day rate.
Right.
But for example, when a client asks for a teleprompter, it's like a really cheap item, but it's outside of my kit and it's an easy item for me to mark up.
Yeah.
So when there's like a specialty item like that, it's like, hey, there's a fee associated with this specialty project. But as far as my hourly rate, I have a rate that I feel like is fair based on the value that I bring to the project, not only from a gear standpoint, but just from an experience standpoint. If I've done an event recap 1,000 times in my career, I'm going to ensure you with the value of my product that it's going to go smoothly, regardless of if, you know, the entire event hits the fan. Like I'm going to know how to get you exactly what you need. And that's, you know, just a piece of the value that you bring. And so if you're happy with your rate and you feel like it's valued accordingly, I have a standardized rate regardless of what I do, where it's like, this is my hourly rate. And if there's a project that I'm like really stoked to go on, I know here's like something that I'll drop down to. But at the end of the day, I'm never ashamed to throw my rate out. And if it's not in your price range, then you're not my client. And there's other clients out there that are willing to pay, you know, whatever rate you're looking for. I was terrified to charge $500 when I first got in the game. And it was like my very first $500 video was like, holy crap, someone's actually paying me to do this. And now, like, you know, most of the time I won't leave my house if it's less than $500. And you know, but that's part of like the climb. And not in like an arrogant way, but it's like when you start booking, this is another thing too, when you have a certain standardized rate and you're not filling up your calendar at all, it's probably time to lower your rate down. But if you're booking 28 out of 30 days of the month at a certain rate, you're probably undervaluing your time.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I was getting started, like I started out at like $20 an hour just to like get some gigs under my belt, and I'd come out for, you know, $200 a day or whatever it was. And then as my calendar filled up, it was like, okay, you know, I've got some stuff under my belt. I'm working way too much. If I need to go to $50 an hour, and then my clients may drop down, but then I'm going to fill that calendar up, and then I'm going to keep doing that. And so eventually you get to a point where it's like, if I'm booking out all my time, then I'm going to increase my rate. But if I'm not filling up my calendar at a certain rate, then you haven't climbed to that point yet.
Yeah, I like that. How do you approach a like client that you already have, and how do you just straight up tell them like, hey, rate's going up?
I think people are way more afraid to do it than they should be. A lot of times I'm very transparent and just, you know, like, hey, just so you know, like 2024 is coming up, and like my new rates are going to this, and I hope we can do business together. At the same token, like if you have a client that's been like super loyal to you for like 3 years, and like, you know, you don't want to double your rate on them out of the blue, like that's kind of a personal question that you got to ask yourself. Like, am I happy? Like this person helped get me started, like, and I have a great friendship with them. We have a great time on set. A lot of times I'm going to be more flexible with someone like that and grandfather them into certain, you know, thresholds. But, you know, one of the things that has really been a cheat code for me in that, and this may not be everyone's path, but this is something that has been beyond cheat codes for me, and that I recommend to every filmmaker getting started who's trying to find clients. A lot of times it's super hard to find individual clients, and then you're dealing with negotiations and bid proposals and handling all this stuff. But when you can go and actually build a relationship with a production company who does that on your behalf, you now may get 50 gigs a year from that one company instead of having to go find 50 clients to fill up all of the days. And when you have an established hourly agreement, you never have to do that stuff. Or you can just come to the production company and have the one conversation and be like, hey, my rate's gone from X to Y. You know, I hope we can still do business together.
Yeah. Most of the time it's like that. When you're working with a production company, it's easy to just go to that one company.
You have a point of contact.
Yeah. And that's something we just recently talked about at one of the creators meetups was, what was it? It's on a blank right now. We're talking about rates. I can't remember. Jeez. Man, it'll come to me.
At the end of the day, if you're happy with your day rate, that's all that matters. If you're not happy with your day rate, then, I mean, raise it. It's really pretty simple.
So then, do you agree with the statement, your day rate is too low?
I don't believe mine is. I believe mine's valued accordingly. I'm not, you know, there's pretty standardized rates-ish in the industry, but everyone does it a little bit differently. And so, like, there's a lot of people that don't give their clients a basic lighting package or, you know, a camera package at all. And it's like, here's my hourly rate, here's my camera package, here's my this. But I have found that it's easier to convince a client that a higher number day rate with no questions of what gear is included, like this gear is included and it's going to help you get the job done, and it's this hourly rate, it's a way easier way to make a sale. On the same way, like I don't nickel and dime like pre-production and, you know, all of this stuff. Like I wrap everything in from a producing standpoint into post-production. And so they have production costs and post-production costs, and those numbers are both higher than a standardized day rate, but they know that everything is included in this process, and they don't have like a screenwriting thing and a da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It's like like it's all just looped in most of the time to a smaller, easier to digest bid.
So I remember what it was. Now. So when you're going to production companies and they can charge the client a lot more, and you could go to a client and charge them a lot more, but production companies are taking on the like they're having to bill the client and wait for that net 30 or net 60.
Right.
And when they're contracting you out, you're getting paid within a
Right.
couple days after doing the job. So they're taking on a lot of that liability of, not knowing, how long or when they're going to get paid. So they're able to charge a lot more. So your rate is a lot lower than what it would normally be, but you could go out and get those clients yourself.
Yeah.
Which is why I like getting contracted out, because I'm not having to deal with.
And most of us, if you want to build a production company and that's your MO, like, then that's amazing.
Yeah.
Then go do that.
Right.
But most of us are creatives that just want to make art.
Yep.
And if you can find like 5 or 6 production companies that hit you up on a regular basis, like, you're good. You have job security. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah, and I think it's always like people always think it's like the organic growth is to like start as a freelancer, end up in either Hollywood or production. And I thought that was how it went. And I was like, I'm going to open a production company. And it always is in the back of my head. But it's like, I am in no rush to do that if I do that, because even when you guys hire me out, there's no fluff. It's like, here's the call sheet. Here's what you need to bring. Here's what we expect. Here's when you get paid.
Right.
And it's like, this is so nice. And don't get me wrong, it's exciting to book a freelance client or whatever. It's like, you get that call, you get that text, and it's like, this is awesome. But for the most part, when you're dealing with like big productions and you're breaking down all the costs and all that, it's like, okay. And I don't have a mind for that.
Yeah.
Just like you said, dude, I just want to get behind the camera. I want to learn. I just want to shoot. And so then when you start getting into the paperwork, it's like, oh, dude,
Yeah.
this is awful.
And it's at the end of the day, it's about your goals, right? Like, if you want to be a DP of big productions, then yeah, like when you start throwing around, 50, 60, 6-figure plus budgets, then like you do have to, like, I do those a lot differently than I would do like a corporate like project that's like interviews plus B-roll.
Yeah.
And so when you're getting to that phase, then it's like, yeah, every single cable is itemized so that there's no, there's no gray area, and you've done your homework, and it's like, it's what's included.
Yeah.
So you went from skateboarding to filming music videos to BTS second unit to directing, or I'm sorry, DPing. What is next for you?
That's a good question. So right now I am definitely trying to do more narrative work. And I've started refining the type of projects that I do. So like most of us, when we get started, we're taking on weddings, we're taking on projects that we hate just to, pay the bills and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of in a phase, like, I don't shoot weddings anymore. I've made my focus on commercial projects, narrative work, and music videos. And don't get me wrong, like, I still take event work and stuff like that if I'm gonna have fun and whatnot. But there's certain projects that it's like I don't do anymore. And so I'm trying to refine the projects that I do. I'm also doing the same thing as you guys are doing. I'm building a podcast myself, the Rough Cut Club, where we teach the art and business of filmmaking. So I've been pouring a lot of time into that. And then the production company, Cinema Story Productions, that I'm partnered with, we're looking to move into a physical HQ in Q1, build out film studios and stuff here in Dallas.
Okay.
That's what's next.
That's the goal, man.
Yeah, dude, that's
That's
awesome.
the goal right there.
Well, I have 2 more rabbits I'd like to chase.
Yeah.
Let's see if I don't draw a blank now that I've
Hit me with them, man.
Into that. So, I think one, we'll do the least exciting, and we'll do the last exciting. For filmmakers watching this, wanting to learn, wanting to say, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to be a filmmaker for life. What's the nitty gritty of it? What's the part everybody likes to avoid? What's the part, like, what's like the bad news, or like, because just from my experience, is like, this is tough. And it's like, I know if I didn't have a wife who's bringing in second income, it's like, I couldn't do this full time. And so it's like, for me, like, I'm in a different spot, but yeah, I'd love to hear, like,
I think at the end of the day, like, what we do is art, right? And we're all artists. And if you are not fully committed to the art itself and want to eat, sleep, and breathe it, at least for a season of your life, then it's going to be a really tough field to excel in. But because there's so many people out there that are willing to go really, really far to get the jobs that you're wanting, and the bad news is that 10,000 hours are required.
Yep.
Like that is what it takes to become, you know, a master at any craft. And if 10,000 hours scares you, then like the road is going to be tough. And, you know, I don't know if I've hit my 10,000 hours yet or where I fall in that, but I know that, like with anything that you do, you have to know that you're not going to be great right off the bat, and that you are starting at the starving artist level. But if you fight long enough and you put in more work and, you know, put in more deliberate practice to grow your craft, and fight at the areas that you're weak at, you know what I mean? Like the people that do really well are the ones that deliberately practice the things that are super hard for them,
Right.
and are intentional about becoming better at their art and their craft. And so you have to know that it's going to be a long road and it's not going to happen overnight. But if you're willing to continue at it, that eventually you can make a comfortable living being an artist, doing what you love.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I always think there's always more to learn too.
Yeah.
I was just checking out your Instagram before I got here, and I came across a video a little while ago, but I was going through the feed, and one of the videos, it was like you and a couple of your friends got together, was like testing out some 50mm lenses and stuff like that. You're always learning, always, you know, trying new things out.
Yeah. There's some that now I'm going to paraphrase when I talk about it, but whenever you first start something, there's like the amount of growth that you have is like, it's parabolic at the beginning, and then it S curves and tapers off. Like over time, you don't get that much better. You get a little bit better over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
But what that's doing is the longer that you do something, the more you learn about the nuance of your craft. When a musician is playing an instrument, at the beginning, they may learn chords, and then, you know, within a couple weeks, they can play a song. But over time, they learn like the nuance of how to do different sounds that communicate, you know, different sonics to someone. And so as a filmmaker, learning the nuance of what different lens characteristics have that are all a 50mm, and learning, you know, the nuance of what different camera bodies do, or what different lights do, or at different distances, and how to soften it like this much more is the nuance that really elevates you beyond your competition. And so when you get to the point where you've kind of mastered the basics, going in to try to master nuance is what can really help elevate your craft to that next level.
Yeah. So I really love gear. What was your favorite 50 out of those? I don't think you said it. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty biased, man. I love the Sigma ecosystem, man. Sigma is just not. There's something about it, man.
Sigma has been faithful to all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm glad they're coming out with the 70-200 for Sony. For
dude,
sure.
it just everything about them is like the price point.
Yeah.
Bokeh, the highlight roll off. Like
they're just solid.
They're really good lenses.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, what's funny about that test is most people wouldn't be able to like see any differences in them.
Yeah.
And I was actually showing my wife that video, and I was like, yeah, but the bokeh, and like and she's like, I don't even know what bokeh is.
Right.
And it's like your average viewer isn't going to notice the nuance. And so at the end of the day, like that nuance is more important to you as an artist as it is to most people that are consuming the art.
The last thing I was gonna say,
last rabbit.
Huh?
The last
rabbit. Well, I guess now I can't. I was just gonna ask you about one of your favorite stories of set. I know you just got to work with Gary V.
I did just work with Gary V.
Yeah.
That was really fun. Gary V's made a pretty big impact on me and just my outlook on everything. So getting to interview him was definitely a milestone. It's just a favorite story.
Yeah. Maybe a favorite experience. A terrible experience.
There's so many. I think that, you know, the feature film was definitely like one of the core like big moments in my career where I got to be responsible for a project that really stretched me as an artist that I walked away from and was super proud of. This is kind of a silly one, but editing my own wedding film was like a really, really cool experience for me. Just like crafting that, you know, like, cause I had one of my guys shoot it. Shane actually shot it for me. And then like going and editing that was like a really special video that like I'll hold on to for a lot of years. Man, some of my very first films though, that like I look back on now, they're like horrible and super cringy. Like I look back on it, I'm like, man, this is where like my life started to develop in these moments. And so I look back on like my first music videos with such fond memories of being a scrappy filmmaker that had a dollar and a dream, but was going out to just make it happen. And I think that like those are some of my favorite filmmaking memories. Like you have like the really cool stuff like that you've achieved, but like those moments when you can go back in time and be like, this is where like my identity and dreams and everything was forming, and like I was getting to experience a camera for the very first time and realize like I'm horrible at this, but I love this thing and I want to get better at it. Like those are some of, you know, my favorite memories to look back on as a filmmaker.
Yeah, it's always cool when people find their craft or their passion and they don't even know it. You know, it's like filmmaking. It's like you're just getting better and you're not thinking about it. You're not like, I have to get better. You're just like, I just want to. You know?
My roots in skateboarding, like part of how skateboarding works is falling like 1,000 times so that you can roll away once. And like that kind of mentality, I feel like is my superpower for how I approach filmmaking, and what gives me a competitive advantage is because I'm not afraid to fall 1,000 times. Like I enjoy that process. And so when I take that to filmmaking and I go like, I just love this process. Even if I'm making bad art, like eventually I'm going to make something that I'm proud of and I can, you know, roll away from in theory. And it's like that falling in love with that process is why I love doing this craft.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Well, I guess for the sake of me not getting in trouble, that's probably where we're going to stop. But seriously, if you haven't checked out the Rough Cut Club podcast, it's amazing. There are thousands of gems. I listen to it.
Appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
It's amazing. Tons of knowledge in there. But thank you, Joey, for coming on.
Thanks for coming.
For sure, bro.
Dropping gems.
Thank you, man. If anyone wants to get in touch, my Instagram is at Joey Nicotra. Happy to chat in the DMs, answer any questions, and appreciate you guys having me on, man. Jared, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, and it's been a pleasure getting to meet you, and I look forward to making more art together down the road, man.
For sure, man. Go check out Joey.
Yeah, check him out.
That's it.